There's only one thing worse than claiming that all of the media that doesn't speak nicely of you is fake news, something Donald Trump has been doing for nearly 10 years while simultaneously documenting more than 35,000 lies. But in this breaking story, the thing that's worse than that is having the ability to control the news. That's how the United States becomes Russia and have nationwide state media. And in this breaking story, I'm going to show you what just happened, what Donald Trump just did, moving us one step closer, right on the eve of his State of the Union address to that. But first, here's a little reminder, real quick, of what Donald Trump likes to talk about when it comes to the fake news.
And there was only 2% of the vote left. And we were way up. If I lost every vote, we would have won the state of Pennsylvania. And the fake news refused to call it, right? They refused to call it. So here was the story by the fake news. The president was 15 minutes late for the Queen. Wrong. And I get myself in trouble because I say that tariff is my favorite word, and the fake news went crazy. What about God? What about wife and family? What about love? I said, okay, tariff is now my fourth favorite word. So they said I was late when I was actually early, number one. Number two, I guess the meeting was scheduled for 15 minutes, and it lasted for almost an hour. The president overstayed. So I was late and I overstayed, and honestly, folks, it was such a beautiful, beautiful visit and afternoon. But they can make anything bad because they are the fake, disgusting news. But I got along great with Putin. I got myself into a lot of trouble with that. You can't believe it. I said, tariff is my favorite word in the dictionary, and I got killed by the fake news. So I say now, it doesn't sound good. Tariff, it's my fourth favorite word. I go, tariff is my fourth favorite word. It sounds so terrible, but this way I'm free. I write free, you know. I don't get clobbered by the fake news. Whatever happened to fair press? Whatever happened to honest reporting?
You tell a lie long enough and receive no consequences for lying, millions of people now believe it. And what Trump has just done in this breaking story is literally remove the Associated Press from the press pool. Take a listen.
The Trump administration now says they will handpick which media outlets will be allowed in the White House press pool, a move that breaks with decades of precedent. Just this morning, the Associated Press was denied access to the press pool at Mar-A-Lago, where reporters from conservative outlets, Real America's Voice and The Daily Wire, are taking their place. In a new piece on MSNBC.com, our own Simone writes, quote, "The people in power do not get to decide who writes about them or what they write. That only happens in dictatorships and autocracies." With us now, the New York Times chief White House correspondent, Peter Baker.
Because what you all are the conduit, you were writing the first draft of history. And what happens when the first draft is heavily edited and redacted?
Well, look, it is an adversarial relationship, as it's supposed to be, between the press and the people in power, whether it's Democrat or Republican. It's not unique to Trump. But hopefully it's also a professional relationship. They can be both things. But it's not up to people in power, or at least hasn't been under Democrats or Republicans going back as long as any of us have been alive, in which a president picked who was in that press pool. Now, a lot of viewers may say, who cares? What's that mean? Well, what it means is you're going to get questions more and more from people like, tell us, sir, about your moral courage. Right. Tell us, sir, about your great poll results, as opposed to, challenging questions, which is what a reporter is supposed to do in that circumstance. Now, some of the mainstream press is still in that press pool, but what he has done by kicking out the Associated Press explicitly and overtly, because of the words that they have written, because of their coverage, is he's put them all on notice, all of us on notice, that if you write something I don't like, I can get rid of you.
And that is the point. Yeah. If you write something I don't like, I will get rid of you. And that has the chilling effect on not just the press, but you see that then ripple out to other institutions and individuals who are watching what's happened, because you are a representation of the freedom that is embodied in our Constitution. What you do is the only job that's actually referenced in the Constitution. But last Wednesday, you wrote, "America is no Russia. The history there is so fraught and complicated. Certainly many Russian journalists would still rather live in Washington these days than Moscow, confident that America's tradition of free press and democratic ideals remains far stronger than what exists back home. But in decades of reporting in Washington under Republicans and Democrats, it has never quite felt like this."
Yeah. So I was based in Moscow for 4 years, the early 4 years of Vladimir Putin's term with my wife, Susan Glasser, for the Washington Post. And what we saw in that 4 years is feeling very familiar to us now in Washington. The crackdown on independent press, the taming of the oligarchs is what they call them there. We can call them tycoons or billionaire tech bros or whatever we want to call them here. Piece by piece, the neutralizing of alternative centers of power or influence in society. Now, it got a lot worse after we left, but that chill that we were feeling in those early 4 years of Putin's time there, we're having flashbacks. We're feeling that here now. And it's a slippery slope that heads in a very bad direction. Now, as I said, America's not Russia. We shouldn't overstate this comparison. But the fear factor is what feels most striking to me. When we got to Russia, people were pretty open about talking with us. By the time we left, people who talked to us freely were no longer talking to us, no longer returning our calls. And I'm feeling that here in Washington. People who used to speak out about Trump, Democrats as well as never Trump Republicans, don't want to be quoted anymore. Please don't use my name. I can't go on television. I don't know if you find that getting guests, but I find trying to get people in my stories, they don't want to have their names out there because they're afraid of what could happen.
I mean, you're listening to someone who's been a correspondent, somebody who's been in that room, someone who's been to Russia, someone who's been doing this for decades of a career, who is telling you, even though sometimes may not even get along with the press, but where we are at is extraordinarily dangerous. And when you start removing legitimate outfits, just like they've done over at the Pentagon, removing people, replacing them with the folks who are never going to put tough questions to them and the folks who are always going to side with them, all you are doing is crafting state media. And all you become in that process, which we can see from the Russia-Ukraine negotiations, is Donald Trump being able to control, the same as he's done with his boardrooms his whole life, the same as he's done when filing bankruptcies and lying 35,000 times, is to never be questioned, because I'm the Godfather. That's what he is and wants to be, the dictator, the totalitarianism, and the Godfather of the media and all things. Don't ever forget, this is a man who said, "I and I alone can fix it." No, you and you alone, Donald, are the fix. You aren't the fixer. You're just the fixes in. You guys stay healthy, but stay frosty.